Hey guys, it's Ted Bogert. Welcome back to the Ted Show. Always love my episodes of Heroes Always Welcome. And today I have a new guest, new to me and new to you all, Mike Ritrovato. And he is a Marine Corps veteran. And I found him on either a veteran site or a podcast site. You found me, but I'm very, very excited to have you on the show, Mike. Heroes Always Welcome is about sharing the journey from military life to civilian life, the ups, the downs, and giving some insights. Because if you don't know it, if you haven't followed the show, veterans tend to struggle with that. It's very different going from military life back into civilian life. And so we like to give resources and provide hope and inspiration. And so Mike is here today to do all of that. Welcome, Mike. How you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me on the show.
I'm excited to have you on the show. All right. So I told you before we went live that the audience, maybe I told you, the audience loves origin stories. So they want to know a little bit about you, maybe a little bit about your journey. So will you share with them, please?
Yeah. So I'm originally from St. Louis, Missouri. That's where I was born. And then I was raised pretty much all up and down the eastern side of Missouri. And then I enlisted in the Marine Corps in June of 2000. Well, actually, I really enlisted like my junior year, but then I graduated boot camp like May 18th, and I was in boot camp like May 31st.
Wow.
Yeah, and then went to boot camp in MCRD San Diego, also known as like a Hollywood Marine. And then transitioned over to my job schooling, where I learned how to essentially drive a 26-ton tank that floats in the water. And then after that, got stationed over in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, where I was there, did a couple of deployments, 2003, 2005, and then went to Iraq in 2006. Wow. And then came back from there and went on recruiting duty up in New York from 2007 to 2010, and then came back to North Carolina for a little bit, did a couple of deployments, and then got stationed in Camp Pendelton, California. And then in September of 2022, I retired from the Marine Corps.
Wow. 22 years service.
Yes.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And thank you for your service. I mean that.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I'm such a big supporter of veterans. I just think we need to do a lot more for you. So that's why I love this show. And I love it when vets share their journey, because there's just so many vets out there that struggle. And it's so important for us to try to help provide resources that they can't get just at the VA.
Yeah.
So tell me, why did you choose the Marine Corps?
Honestly, I just kind of luck of the draw at the time. And I didn't see myself after high school. I didn't have a plan as far as what I wanted to do. I wasn't really the schooling type. I didn't really like school. And then I was just in my counselor's office one day, and it just so happened that there was a little pamphlet on the counter. And I was like, oh, this looks pretty cool. And of course, the Marine Corps dress blues on that pamphlet. And I just saw it, took it. And, back in the day, I just kind of filled out the flyer, sent it in. And then the recruiter contacted me, and, the rest is history.
So you go in at 18-ish, I assume, and you come out 22 years later. So really, you knew military life longer than you knew civilian life until you got back out. What was it like when you retired and there was no order? A lot of it is order and structure, right? What was your transition out of the military like?
I would say probably the hardest thing was, the pay, because essentially you go from, getting paid on the 1st and the 15th every month, and you have like a set pay that you're getting for that month. And then when you retire, granted, you do still get, at least majority of people after, 20 years get their disability and, your pension, but your disability I forget, it's either your disability or your pension doesn't kick in for a month after you retire. So I essentially had, a month as soon as I retired that I wasn't expecting, where I went, from 10,000 a month down to like 2,000 a month for like
Wow.
1 month.
Wow. That's huge.
Yeah.
Did you struggle with, or did you have challenges? Because in the military, you have a particular skill that you're trained on most of the time, and you're doing. Was it hard for you to take the military training and all of that education and hands-on training and convert it out into civilian life? Did you go right into corporate life? Did you become a salesperson? Tell us a little bit about what jobs you've had since you got out almost 3 years ago, 2.5 years.
So, as I told you earlier, I drove a 26-ton tank in the Marine Corps, and there's not many of those in the civilian life. So not many people in the civilian life are, driving tanks around or, doing stuff like that. But the good thing about, my time in the Marine Corps is, in the Marine Corps teaches you not just your job skill, it teaches you multiple different skills. And one of the skills that I was, seemed to excel in, kind of if you look in the background back here, this is stuff from recruiting. And whenever I was out there on recruiting, it just seemed very natural to me as far as sales. And looking at it and evaluating it, I had kind of been in sales almost my whole life.
Right.
Prior to the Marine Corps, I did, a couple of different sales jobs. And then recruiting duty, 3 years in the Marine Corps, that is essentially sales. And then I used that to essentially transition into doing real estate now, which is sales.
Excellent. So a veteran that has transferred his talents and into the real estate world. It's interesting because a lot of times people will say they drove the big 26-foot truck boat that you were talking about. Not exactly that, but they'll share that it was a skill, and they just had the most difficult time figuring out what they wanted to do. And a lot of them eventually have moved into some sort of sales or marketing position because of the background was so wide and they were used to dealing with people, which I assume was it hard doing your first? How long have you been in real estate?
I actually started in real estate right like prior to getting out. So I was in real estate in California for about 6 months prior to actually getting out. And then whenever I moved to where I'm currently at, Texas, prior to actually getting out of the Marine Corps, I got my license here in Texas where I'm at. So I'm licensed in both states. So it was an easy transition.
So smart. I think that's forward thinking.
Yeah.
You get out, you have a plan. I've talked to several vets over the years who did the same thing, similar. Like they got their licenses before, and they had either started investing or started working with people, and so their transition, like yours, it sounds like, was a little bit easier than a lot. What would you recommend somebody coming out of the military if they're coming out, what they should do maybe before, if they know that they are retiring, or if they're already out and they're having a difficult time finding their way?
One of the big things I would highly recommend is getting and ensuring that you get what's called benefits delivery at discharge, making sure that's done. I believe you can start it at 180 days. It's like 180 days to 90 days, you start processing your benefits claim. And if you go below that 90-day window, if you hit like 89 days, you essentially get put in a separate window to where you won't start getting your paycheck for your disability until months after you retire. So you would just be on your retirement pay. So let's say 2,500 bucks, you would only be getting that 2,500 versus, 7,000 a month, with your retirement and disability combined.
That's interesting. I've never had anybody answer that. Time frames are important, obviously, which is
Definitely.
it's interesting because I think as civilians, we look and we think, all right, you served our country. The VA handles everything. You don't have to think about anything. And obviously that's not the case, which is why we have a ton of different, especially in my town, and I'm sure where you are, there's other extra veteran organizations that aren't tied to the VA that provide resources, because the VA is a resource, don't get me wrong, but it certainly doesn't address or provide some of the things that are needed out there. Are you involved in any veteran organizations in Texas?
Not at the moment, no.
Is your plan to do anything in the veteran community? I'm always curious about that. Do you work on the real estate side with a lot of vets, or is your target just all people?
I do. So I actually hold VA home buying seminars. Usually every, 2 to 3 months, I will, kind of compile a list of people, veterans in my area, and I'll go out to, a Buffalo Wild Wings or a Walk-On's restaurant, or we've actually got one going next month at a resort here in Texas where we're essentially going to bring a bunch of veterans together and then show them, because one of the things that I learned while in the Marine Corps is a lot of people don't actually know how to use their veteran benefits. For example, like their home loan, they're just like, oh yeah, I just go to the VA. The VA is just going to give me my home loan, when that's not actually the case.
It is not.
And we actually bring them in and teach them, hey, me as the real estate agent, here is a lender. This lender is going to pull your certificate of eligibility. They're going to process your loan, and I will actually help you find a home, and you'll become a homeowner. So I bring them in, educate them, and teach them how to actually use their VA benefits as far as their home loan goes.
That's excellent, because I don't know about in your area, but a lot of times I'm in Orlando. So a lot of times, even still on the MLS, the listing agent will say no VA loans, welcome. And so one of my goals here has always been to educate the realtors to not look at it as a problematic loan. I don't know.
And I have actually had to, educate other agents, because, they've told me like, yeah, we're not accepting VA loans. And I'm like, you might want to kind of think about how you word that, because that's actually discrimination against veterans.
That's correct.
Because they're afraid of what's called the wood destroying insect inspection. And whenever I educate them, and I actually tell the agent, I'm like, hey, listen, out of my commission, I will pay for that wood destroying insect inspection, because that's sometimes what a hangup is that termite inspection. And they're like, oh, it's that simple. I'm like, yeah, it's that easy. It's just a misconception that, some agents have, that they're like, oh, well, a VA loan, it's harder to get than other loans, when actually it's one of the easier loans to process for a lender.
VA loans I'm a lender. I don't know if you know that, but I'm a lender. And so VA loans are my favorite. I just think they're the easiest. And I know it's funny coming from me, but I always feel good when a veteran gets into a home using their VA benefit to get in there. And I've done a lot of educational classes, because veterans don't know that you can purchase, as long as you live in one of the units, you can purchase up to 4, like a quadplex with your VA benefit. So there's a lot of misinformation and a lot of information that doesn't get disseminated out there. And so we're really in my area, in my association, we're really trying to educate the realtors to stop looking at it like that. I don't know how you would look at it like that anyway, if you have any care for our country and the people who have served it.
I know, right?
I just get aggravated about that, because it's such a slap in the face when I see that on the MLS.
Yeah. A lot of people, they just want the easy path, and they're like, oh, no, let's just go with this easier loan, when in all actuality, they just don't know that the VA loan may actually be the easier loan.
That's correct. All right. As we wrap up, I always like to ask a personal question, and that I don't know you until today, but I think all veterans are heroes. They are, at least in my mind. No matter where you served, how you served, what you did, you still served our country, and that is a selfless sacrifice, I believe. When I say the word hero to you, who's the first person that comes to mind?
Honestly, I mean, just the history that I have experienced in the Marine Corps, I would think that, just the Marines that have gone before me and, ultimately weren't able to actually come home.
Yeah, amen to that. All right, Mike, tell us how they can reach you, learn more about your real estate business. How can they find you?
You can pretty much Google Mike Ritrovato Realtor, and I'm just about everywhere on Google, YouTube. My YouTube channel is Living in Burleson, Texas, and like I said, you can just Google really just Google my name, and it's out there.
Fantastic. Well, thanks again for being on the show. You all get out and support our veterans. If you're a real estate professional out there and you're not accepting VA loans, please reach out to me and Mike, and we will educate you on the error of your ways. But support our veterans. They don't get all of their benefits from the VA. There's lots of resources that they need and that they deserve, in my opinion. So, Mike, thanks so much for serving, and thanks for being on the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome, buddy. All right. Y'all have a good one. Bye, everybody.